today, a lot of AI use cases are about answering questions. But as the technology matures, it's going to be about AI making decisions and taking action without a human in the loop. And at that point, your data actually becomes the number one strategic execution risk in how your business is operating, because the agents are using that data to actually make some, over time, more and more sizable decisions on your behalf. And that, for us, is something that we take incredibly seriously, because having the right data inputs is going to be one of the major strategic choices that organizations are going to have to make to fuel their AI execution layer.
Hi, I'm Nicole McKinley, and I lead global customer experience at Microsoft. Simply CX is about making sense of CX in the real world. Each episode brings you inside conversations with leaders who are navigating complexity, trade-offs, and change, sharing what they've learned along the way. And if you're one of those leaders and want to keep the conversation going, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Today on Simply CX, I'm excited to welcome Tom Wynter from Kantar to the show. Now, you may remember an episode we did with Tom's colleague, Mark Chamberlain, focused on Kantar's work in CX metrics. Tom works at the intersection of brand, customer insight, and technology, and he's been deeply involved in how Kantar is rethinking what modern insight actually looks like inside large, complex organizations. Kantar is one of the most trusted names in consumer and brand intelligence, and Tom brings a really grounded, thoughtful perspective on how that work is evolving. So welcome, Tom. You've been in the research and brand tracking space for quite some time. What was your motivation to innovate and really change the game in this industry?
Well, it's wonderful to be here. So I joined Kantar 3.5 years ago. And one of the things that really drew me to the organization is the fundamental scale of the change and the disruption in this industry. Market research has been around for a very long time, but technology and AI represent a major shift in what these organizations can do and are being expected to do by their clients. And the scale of that disruption is super energizing to me. It's difficult. It requires working at pace in a complex environment, but it keeps things really interesting and the opportunity is fantastic.
Well, and now more than ever, as technology and AI becomes so innovative and it's rapidly changing and it's commoditizing a lot of capabilities out there, the differentiation opportunity is becoming even more important for brands to really figure out, what's unique about them. So this work is particularly critical at this moment in time. I know traditional brand tracking and research tends to struggle with the time it takes to deliver value, tends to struggle with just the high cost associated with research and deriving, meaningful value from that. Especially for large global organizations like Microsoft, we serve so many different kinds of customers, and really figuring out what is needed and valued across such a diverse customer base can be challenging. And then there's always that lag time between an insight and being able to actually determine what to do about it and take action. How are you and Kantar working to address these challenges?
It's a very complex topic, but one that is incredibly important for Kantar as a business and for our ecosystem. If we take a step back, brand measurement in some form has existed for much of the last 40 or 50 years. And understanding your brand has always been a really central pillar of the marketer's playbook. And as the marketing system has evolved, first through the digital landscape and now with AI, the need to understand your brand hasn't fundamentally gone away, but it has changed very, very importantly, because you need to now move at the pace of the marketing cycle and at the pace of the consumer. And the consumer is experiencing your brand in many different channels, in many different touch points. And the measurement tools that you use need to reflect that fragmented and diverse consumer experience. And that is, in simple terms, the opportunity for Kantar and the opportunity for Kantar deploying AI, deploying modern data foundations to enable brands to understand consumers through more channels and ultimately to make better marketing decisions at a faster pace than they ever have done before.
And so you talked about AI as being like one of the capabilities that you are clearly invested in to enable this pace of change, this new innovation in brand marketing and insights. What other capabilities are essential from your perspective that you and the Kantar team are focused on lighting up?
Well, at the core, Kantar is a data company. So it all starts with high quality data on real humans, on consumers around the world. We track hundreds of millions of consumers in every major market around the world, if not every market around the world. And our number one priority is having the right high quality data foundations to ensure that we have that single thread from what a consumer is thinking and the attitudes that they hold in their mind through to the insight and the recommendations that we provide to a brand. So it all starts with that foundational data layer. And then on top is how we enrich that insight to drive recommendation and action for brands. So that includes analytics, some proprietary IP and statistical techniques that we add to infer insight and recommendations from that data. And then ultimately, on top of those analytics, it's the distribution layer and how we embed those insights into the client workflow. And that can be through a PowerPoint presentation, it can be through an API, it can be through an MCP endpoint, it can be through an agent. And with the explosion of distribution channels enabled by technology, it's a really, really exciting opportunity for Kantar, powered in some instances by the Microsoft stack, to embed our data and IP and analytics much more firmly where marketers work. And that's the journey we're on.
Super exciting. I know in my own organization, even we talk about this concept of productizing insights and thinking about insights as a really valuable product that can be tuned and enabled for the different audiences that we serve. I wanted to better understand what you're hearing from your customers, both on the consumer and perhaps on the business side as well, in terms of like what they're looking for from their perspective. Like, what are their top needs and what really has stood out for you in terms of the biggest opportunities to get after?
When we think about this problem, I talk about how we embed brand intelligence into our client workflow. So clients tend to ask us for three different forms of intelligence. Number one, what is the signals intelligence that I use to understand the landscape and what is happening in the market? Two is decision intelligence. So what are the decisions that I need to make and what are the inputs, what are the data feeds, the signals, the recommendations, the analytics that I need to make those decisions? And three, what is the strategic guidance I need to make informed long-term choices? And we try and play at the intersection of each of those three things, the right signals, the right decision intelligence, and the right strategic guidance for our clients. And all of those things are enabled by what we hear a lot from clients is pace, insights at the pace of the marketing ecosystem, the right depth and breadth of data to support that signals layer, and ensuring that always our data and our analytics are validated, are statistically significant, are bulletproof in terms of driving confidence in decision-making and in execution. And many of those things, to be honest, are not new. The speed and time to value, it has been a refrain in the marketing ecosystem for many, many years.
Sure.
What's changed, the paradigm shift, is how AI and technology can enable that and make it significantly more achievable.
So let's dive into that. Kantar, you mentioned yourself, is partnering with Microsoft to really establish foundational AI capabilities. Why Microsoft, and where did you start in terms of tapping into these technology capabilities? And what has that journey looked like for you and the Kantar team?
We had a wonderful foundation on which to build. The Kantar-Microsoft relationship goes back many years, and there's been a lot of foundational modernization and infrastructure work that predates this iteration of our partnership. But when I joined the firm a few years ago, it became clear that there was a bigger opportunity, that bringing Microsoft and Kantar into deeper collaboration would enable. And it was really three things that stood out to us as a team when we started discussing this opportunity. The first is there's real synergy and alignment in the workflow, in that our clients are big users of the Microsoft technology. And as we think about embedding our data and our recommendations into the workflow, Microsoft was really a very natural partner. The second thing is, as we got deeper into the relationship, it was really clear that the Microsoft roadmap was very aligned with our direction of travel. So data foundations in Fabric, AI foundations in Foundry, and now with Agent 365, as well as kind of the broader enabling infrastructure in Azure. So there was a really natural fit between the tools that Microsoft was building and where we want to go as an organization. Copilot is another good example and an area where we've gone really fast. And the final thing, to be honest, was a bit of a shared sense of vision from the Microsoft team and our team, partly driven by what we were hearing from our same clients, but in different rooms of the house. So the Microsoft team that we were talking to was hearing from the technology organizations of some of our largest clients about how do I go faster? How do I get more data in the workflow? And we were hearing from the marketing organizations, from the insights organizations, very, very similar things. And that almost organically allowed us to build this very strong shared sense of vision.
How did you begin this transformation, not only thinking about the technology aspects, but also the people and the process aspects as well, which I think are, quite frankly, the more challenging things to tackle in any enterprise-wide transformation?
Kantar is a large, disparate, not quite as large as Microsoft, but it's a large and disparate organization. And people has been a really, really central part of how we've been approaching the work that we're doing. The first sort of work stream pillar that we established was really about equipping our teams. And actually, Copilot was a really big part of that journey. So we made the decision to give almost everyone in the organization Copilot very, very early on. And we really went very hard on Copilot adoption as the tip of the spear to drive that change management and that journey on the individual level. So we've been on the Copilot journey for almost 2 years now, and we have over 90% adoption. We have over 10,000 people using Copilot, and we have thousands and thousands of individual productivity agents built through Copilot Studio now in production. And that gives us a really fantastic base on which to build, because more foundational tools that we're using can be exposed via Copilot. And also it gets people working in a new way, in a different way, trying new technology or using different tools to do their job. And that really teed up the other pillars of the transformation that we have that we knew were also going to take a little bit longer to mature, and that we're now starting to sort of bring to life and will be a big focus over the next few quarters.
Well, super impressive. I mean, over 10,000 users of Copilot and thousands of agents that you've developed tailored to your unique needs. It's a great best practice. We see that across so many other customers like Kantar, who are at the forefront of really being frontier and being AI first, as they start with that simple step of like putting the technology, putting the tools like Copilot in the hands of their people. And as you start to see what's possible, you start to dream bigger, and that then creates that pathway to the next level of innovation. You mentioned you started with kind of the need for speed or going faster or productivity. And I see that across a lot of customers, right? The first kind of objective of applying AI is that productivity play. But I think you'd agree that the real unlock opportunity is creating that kind of next level of innovation, new products, new services, new value. What has that looked like for you and the Kantar team?
I couldn't agree with you more. I talked about multiple pillars of our transformation effort. So the first was really about equipping our teams and getting our people on the journey. The second is putting in place some of those foundations that we know we need to build on to really unlock the third pillar, which is about innovating our offer and reinventing what Kantar can do for clients. So in that second pillar, we've made a lot of progress strengthening our data foundations, putting in place AI foundations that are reusable, both for our teams to drive accelerated productivity, but also then to start to unlock the really exciting use cases in our offer. And some of the things that we've made a lot of progress on are synthetic data, so amplifying human data with synthetic approaches, but also exposing our IP into the AI workflow, as well as some of the speed and time to market benefits that we were talking about earlier, automating parts of the process just to enable clients to get the data that they need to make decisions that much more quickly.
You mentioned the importance of data and data foundations. Often at Microsoft, we talk about intelligence and trust and the power of using our platform, using technology to really unlock the value of, in this case, your intelligence as Kantar, but also your broad set of customers' unique intelligence within their own company. And then the trust element is really about ensuring that there's security and compliance, but also that the people using the data trust the data and trust in this case, the insights, right? And ensuring that it is really giving them the ability to make faster, more informed decisions and that strategic guidance. I'm curious, as you've gone through this transformation, do you run into any challenges on either the intelligence or the trust side?
To be honest, it's a journey that everyone in the marketing industry is on. Kantar has a phenomenal capability in producing trusted data. It's what we do. We have a triple lock on our data, how we validate the panelist, how we ensure that the data that we collect is collected in the right way, and then the checks that we do after the fact. And these are a series of tools and techniques that have been built up over decades. And so a big part of the journey for us is how do we preserve these things? How do we improve and enrich them using AI? And ultimately, how do we ensure that we are on this kind of continuous improvement journey on data quality? And there are new things that we need to layer into this process as we get into the AI topic in particular. How do we ensure that steps of the process that are deterministic remain deterministic, that you don't have the kind of stochasticity that you see in some of the agentic tools? And how are you really thoughtful about that? That's something that we're continuing to work through. And similarly, responsible AI. This is a huge, huge topic where we've benefited hugely from collaboration with Microsoft, having a responsible AI pattern and framework to kind of align to, so that when insights are being produced, we have that thread and we know what's producing them, how the tools are reasoning, again, that kind of deterministic versus not layer. And it's ultimately all kind of interrogatable and explainable. This concept of explainable AI is super, super important in our industry. So it's that combination of enriching the data quality foundations that we have, and then that trust and explainability, all enabled by the technology that's enabling our researchers to do their best work with confidence.
So from your experience then, would you say that your AI solutions that you've built have actually increased the explainability and the traceability and the quality of the output? Or how would you describe that? And I'm probing here because even my own analytics leader and my own insights leader have a healthy dose of skepticism around how much value can we get out of AI out of the gate when it comes to really meaningful, actionable insights.
So I'm going to hedge a little bit.
That's fair.
And say there are different use cases. So there are some areas where, especially in the digital marketing landscape, where what you need as a decision maker is good enough, on time, really fast, where you might accept there's a degree of error or there's a lower level of precision that is acceptable in order to make a really rapid decision on which channel to optimize for or which creative content you want to push or you want to double down behind as part of your digital campaign. But then there are other areas, the more strategic decisions, some of the brand measurement work that we do, where it really, really does need to be top to tail, completely bulletproof. And what we're seeing is actually there is more appetite to have different flavors of those use cases. So you still need your absolutely fully reliable data, signals, intelligence foundations. And that's an area where you're not going to allow a huge amount of AI running free over that data because it's super, super important and you need it to be longitudinal and comparable and explainable. But on the top, when you're making the day-to-day decisions, actually it's a net new use case. You're enabling things that you couldn't do before. And
Absolutely.
in that use case, you have that kind of lower level precision. So I don't think it's an either or, it's an and that we're seeing from our clients, and for us is super exciting.
It's so exciting. I mean, I often talk about it as AI-powered, human-led. And this is also where the combination of the human brain power, human intelligence, leveraging these AI capabilities, whether that's training new models or continuously tuning new solutions, that's where we're seeing the kind of real unlock of things we never really imagined before. So it's fair and valid to have a healthy dose of skepticism, but to also not limit your own mindset on what's possible, because now more than ever, the technology really can enable new capabilities that we could never really imagine ever before.
And looking ahead, there are going to be some really interesting questions to work through. Because as you say, today, a lot of AI use cases are about answering questions. But as the technology matures, it's going to be about AI making decisions and taking action without a human in the loop. And at that point, your data actually becomes the number one strategic execution risk in how your business is operating, because the agents are using that data to actually make some, over time, more and more sizable decisions on your behalf. And that, for us, is something that we take incredibly seriously, because having the right data inputs is going to be one of the major strategic choices that organizations are going to have to make to fuel their AI execution layer.
I couldn't agree more, which is just another reason why, that investment in data foundations and ensuring that your intelligence as a company is set up and secure and clean in the right way out of the gate. So on the topic of data, synthetic data, there's a lot of ambiguity out there in terms of what is synthetic data? So help me unpack that a bit. What is synthetic data and how is Kantar using it? And what is it not?
Some of these approaches have been around in the research industry for a very long time. So the techniques that are being used have existed and are validated. What's new here is that the technology enables a granularity and a scale factor that has not been possible before. So we're using GPUs and agents to produce data sets that simply wouldn't have been possible even 5 or 10 years ago. So when we think about synthetic data, there are really a number of different angles to it. The first form of synthetic data is really creating more granularity out of an existing data set. So if you have some subgroups where you can only interview 20 or 30 people, you can infer much more about that data set by cross-cutting with other forms of data that you have. So you're producing more insight on the same data set using some advanced statistical techniques. The second form would be to build a synthetic segment of a particular consumer group where using multiple data signals, you can model a particular segment and you can query that to do some kind of analysis of what a consumer in that group might say using signals that you have to hand, as it were. And then the third form is really the kind of consumer twin, which is an area where it's early stage, but it's super exciting. And we're doing some very exciting pilots with some of our most advanced clients. But that's really producing a synthetic individual. And we have a panel of something like 7 million permissioned individuals that we're using to create these twins where you can actually have very, very granular consumer insights conversations and use those for marketing use cases that just wouldn't have been economical in the past. So these
cool.
forms of synthetic data are still emerging, but we are, as an organization, really, really energized about their potential if and only if combined with the right human data foundations, because synthetic data without the right data foundations, without validated human insight powering it, is just going to be, whatever the expression is, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, no, that's so key. So on the consumer synthetic twin, can I think about that like a digital twin?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a replication of me or you. And essentially, it would be used to produce insight and perspective as if it were me. And what I like, what I don't like, what I'm interested in, what I most likely would be interested in 2 weeks from now. Is that the kind of idea?
That's exactly the idea. And what we're doing is we are tailoring those twins to specific use cases within the marketing lifecycle. So the first one is having the right packaging and brand positioning for a new product. So with the granular information that we have on what that twin likes, we can then pair that with the key questions that marketers have. And they can do forms of analysis that they just wouldn't have been able to do before in real time. So you can test 20 packaging concepts with a consumer twin. You can do what-if analysis. You can try new things. You can use AI to create net new packaging concepts as well. And you can iterate that with the twin and come out with a significantly improved design that, if you want, you can then still test with humans. But you can do that in the course of a few hours rather than in the course of, weeks or even months, which is the world that we've come from.
Pretty amazing agility in terms of the ability to test and refine and innovate. Very exciting. From your customers' perspective, what are you hearing or seeing in terms of their interest or lack thereof in using synthetic data? This is a hotly debated topic even within my own organization in terms of like, when and where do we want to use it? We're all in on using it for sure. But what are you hearing?
I mean, there's no shortage of appetite to try these things. Everyone recognizes that the direction of travel for the industry, I think about it as a kind of living intelligence layer where you have a combination of really strong, high quality human data foundations amplified by synthetic data to enable marketers to have that strong foundation, but also move super quickly. So there's no shortage of appetite to try, but clients and organizations exist on a spectrum. And with that appetite to try, there's obviously also an expectation to validate, to prove. Insights departments do demand the highest standards and rightly are challenging us to prove that the data that we produce synthetically is decision grade. We have a point of view that it is, or we have a point of view on how it is best used, and it's not best used in every use case. That wouldn't be right. But it's that combination of experimentation in the right use cases combined with validation, underpinning, and honestly guardrails so that you're only using it when it's used for the right use case in the right way. And that's the right evolution that we're seeing. And we're pretty bullish, to be honest, if it's used in the right way, that it could be adopted pretty widely in the industry.
And so do you see synthetic data replacing the need for traditional research and insights instrumentation, like surveys. Like everyone out there likes to give feedback through a survey or even clicking buttons. I know my kids who prefer to engage online or through social platform never wants to give feedback. I, as a CX leader, always love to give feedback because I appreciate the value of doing so. But do you see synthetic data kind of changing the game with regards to the need or the modality for how feedback is captured from humans?
It will never fully replace direct input from consumers, but a few things might change. The exciting thing from a research point of view about synthetic data is it might allow us to collect broader forms of signals from consumers and power synthetic data with a wider set of data sources. Today, studies tend to be surveys or qual or some digital social signals. And the prospect of synthetic data over the medium term might allow us to fuse, or should allow us to fuse, those signals into a kind of synthetic layer. And to be honest, we're already making some pretty big investments in harmonizing digital signals with survey-based research, and synthetic will be an accelerator for that. But I don't think in some of the core use cases that it will ever change the need for some of the foundational, real validated consumer interaction. Because at the end of the day, consumers change and synthetic data is only good as the historical data it was trained on. So while it might be a layer on top and an amplifier, and in some use cases, we might want to be much more bullish because it's the only option is to do something synthetically or not do it. But again, it'll be a combination of those two that we will need to have both.
Well, and given that you're at the forefront of developing and leveraging these synthetic data-based use cases, are you finding that there's an important need to actually distinguish the insights that are derived from synthetic data in those applicable use cases from those that are from real consumers? And how is that changing the way you're presenting or enabling insights in the flow of work for Kantar's customers?
100%. It needs to be done entirely transparently. And frankly, at the moment, we're seeing a lot of kind of parallel work where you do something synthetically and then you do it using traditional approaches and you kind of look at the two.
And compare.
And it will never be entirely the same because different sample sizes, et cetera, et cetera. But it's important to understand how these things behave differently. And they are ultimately for different use cases, because typically, if you're using a synthetic group, it's because you want to move more quickly than you can with traditional approaches, or you have a cost challenge, or there's a price point that you can't hit with traditional approaches. So the use cases are different, and therefore it's important to flag the research itself as different. And also for our people in engaging with our clients and providing recommendation, it's important to be clear on how those things are different, what the differences are from a research and from a methodology point of view, and what that means in terms of what you can infer from the research and the decisions that you can make or not. So we're still at a level of immaturity where these things sort of need to coexist. But over time, in the same way that surveys are an input and qual is an input, we will see more of, or synthetic is an input, or
another key input.
And particularly our larger, more sophisticated clients will have Kantar synthetic data combined with their own proprietary synthetic data, and they will want to feed that into their models or their analytics or their dashboards or visualization tools. And we'll need to figure out how to distinguish those things and how to make them all work together as well.
So between synthetic data and having a really solid data foundations layer, your AI solutions, the agents that Kantar is building, how is this all coming together to enable new experiences for your customers who are using this data and this intelligence. You talked about kind of embedding insight into the process or workflow for marketers. What is that actually looking like? Are there any solutions that you and the Kantar team have actually deployed already where you're just like, wow, that's a game changer?
Yeah, so we have a couple of very early stage pilots in this space. I think for us, having a common framework around MCP is really important and a foundation for us to build on. So we have a couple of areas in the business where we have early stage MCP endpoints. They're primarily internal. But for us, the insights journey of the future is our data with those quality checks, with that analytics and IP over the top, exposed via MCP or via A2A with a kind of reasoning agent on top that a marketer can work with natively inside their Copilot or inside their Teams instance or inside their Fabric environment, where it's calling Kantar IP, Kantar data alongside client proprietary data sets on inventory, shipment, marketing spend on different channels. And the Kantar agent is helping to orchestrate using the Kantar data in the right way and then providing insights and recommendations across those different data sets. We're a way away from that today, but we have a couple of areas of the business where we're starting to expose Kantar data and Kantar recommendations and IP through those MCPs, which I think we see as a real opportunity. And candidly, a lot of businesses have gone through what I would call kind of dashboard exhaustion. I'm a fan of Fabric and a fan of Power BI, but there's only so many dashboards that different divisions or business units can create. So back to the rationale for us to partner with Microsoft is having that intelligence show up where you work in your Copilot daily brief powered by Kantar that will make insights and marketing teams' lives significantly easier rather than the kind of desk swiveling that we have today between different PowerPoint presentations, different Excel spreadsheets, different dashboards, and the opportunity to make that workflow much simpler. And then ultimately, over time, have agents take over significant parts of that workflow. That's got to be the direction of travel.
So powerful. And already, whether it's Copilot or a custom-built agent on the Microsoft stack is able to serve up in the moment insights. And then with a click of a button or one statement, that can be produced into a beautiful PowerPoint deck if that's your form factor of choice, right? Or a Power BI. Or whatever it may be. The capabilities are pretty awesome. In terms of, though, how all of this innovation and change and new technology capabilities, new AI capabilities are changing, the world of the researcher, the analyst, the insights leader. What does that look like? Are you seeing any significant changes in what's needed in those roles to be successful in the age of AI?
It's a really exciting time to be working in the kind of insights space in particular, because a lot of the historic work of those teams is fairly rigorous, foundational data checking, ensuring accuracy, and not enough of that time is spent partnering with the marketing organization or with the sales organization on, okay, well, what does this tell us and what do we actually need to do differently here? And as more of the workflow becomes automated and agentified, that will free up time for insights teams and for marketing teams to spend more energy on the things that matter and that drive ROI. And there will be some net new, interesting and difficult challenges for insights teams in particular to focus on, not least synthetic data, curating your data sets so that they are as strategically valuable and differentiated from your competition as possible versus just checking that the data is coming through as it should and that there aren't any kind of quality issues or things that really become hygiene factors, and means that the insights function becomes significantly more strategic as a partner to marketing to drive decisions versus just an input. And that's really exciting.
So from your perspective, if I say it slightly differently, do you actually see the criticality and the power of like the human relationship and the human connection as that strategic advisor or thought partner increasing, while in parallel, the power and value of what AI can bring to the table is also increasing? Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. There's a certain amount of human capacity and brain power that organizations have. And as some of that capacity is released because of agents, there will be new, net, interesting, and powerful problems for the human team to be focused on that the AI won't be able to solve. And when it gets a bit better, there will be more net new things for the human team to be focused on, and AI will be an enabler to those things.
Well said. So advice for CX leaders who maybe are a little bit earlier on in their AI journey, maybe they're interacting with a Copilot or an AI agent. Perhaps they're skeptical with regards to the real unlock in terms of insights and strategic guidance that can be provided through AI. Any advice for those leaders who are at the beginning of their journey?
The first is what's really helped us is this kind of continuous experimentation mindset. And actually our Copilot rollout and getting the kind of hearts and minds of, we're going to do things differently. We put the onus on you all to try new things, to adopt the technology, to build your own agents and see what works, and actually giving people the freedom to try new things. We've had fantastic engagement and suggestions from our teams on what we could do differently that have turned into real initiatives at the kind of enterprise level. And the technology is moving at such a pace, you just have to keep experimenting. Because even in the last 2-3 months, there are things that I didn't think that would be possible that are now possible. So that continuous experimentation is a huge one. And the second thing is treating your data as a strategic asset and as a future execution risk. So investing the time and energy in those foundations, whether that's how you ingest data, how you harmonize data, being really thoughtful on which parts of the organization it will need to be distributed to and in what form, that has been a really important reflection for us to go through. And it's given us a lot of clarity on what are the investments we need to make now, what are the things that we need to do later. And frankly, it's driven a lot of clarity on things that we shouldn't be doing and pivots that we should make in our roadmaps as well, which have made our life a bit easier, because once you stop something, you release that brain capacity to really double down on the things that matter.
Well, very insightful. The power of people combined with the power of data and using both effectively is really what's going to change the game in terms of how AI and technology can best be used to deliver real incremental value going forward faster and better than ever before. So thank you so much, Tom, for joining me. I learned a lot, some really exciting capabilities that you and the Kantar team are building, and also really appreciate your partnership with Microsoft.
Thank you, Nicole. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to Simply CX. I'm Nicole McKinley. Our show is produced by Large Media. That's LARJ Media. Special thanks to Elizabeth Machado. To find out more about today's guests, check out the links in the show notes. If you have your own challenges or questions, email us at simplycx@microsoft.com. And please share today's episode with someone you think could learn from it. And follow me on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going.